Curling fans, as America's best curling teams prepare to compete on the world stage, you've come to the one place with everything you need involving USA Curling. It's the Extra In podcast with Price Atkinson. Get ready for everything that you need to know. News, interviews, points of view, anything involving Team USA forming and the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea for Team USA Curling is found here. It's the Extra In podcast with Price Atkinson and the 12th In Sports Network crew, powered by Isagenix.
Welcome into the Extra In podcast with the 12th In Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. I'm Price Atkinson. That is Joe Calabrese with the 12th In Sports Network, episode 5 of the Extra In podcast. Joe, excited to bring yet another awesome episode here of the podcast. We got some great stuff ahead in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely, Price. You know, this has really been the talk of the summer off season is to who is going to be included in the Olympic trials and what happened with that fifth men's spot that was available but didn't get placed in the original selection. We've got the story of Team Birr, and we've got Todd Birr and John Benton, who are going to outline for us their appeals process and what ultimately led them to be included as that fifth team for the trials in November.
Yeah, an exclusive interview at that, because I don't believe they've shared this story really anywhere, Joe, with anybody else. So just really a unique and awesome opportunity to talk with JB and Todd just about, you know, being victorious without appeal to be included in the trials. I don't think I've heard this story anywhere else, and you're going to hear it right here on the Extra In podcast, Joe.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, me either. So you will hear that coming up here in this episode. You will also hear our weekly roundtable. Is Joe and I, we will talk with two-time Olympian Jessica Schultz. She's going to join us again this week. Had a lot of fun with her last week with Sean Murray and I talking through some various topics, but really excited that Jessica is going to join us again this week, and, you know, is another kind of added, you know, layer to this thing. She was on the panel that heard the Team Birr case, so we'll touch on that a little bit with her. We'll also touch on kind of what happened around the world of USA Curling with some of the high-performance teams and what they went out and did this weekend, Joe. But, you know, just a lot of fun. We do this here every single week. The Extra In podcast with the 12th In Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. You can get it every single Thursday morning, a brand new episode right on your smartphone, Joe. All you got to do is go to your Apple Podcast app on your smartphone. Go to the Apple Podcast app, search for the Extra In. Boom, hit subscribe. You got us right there, a brand new episode every Thursday morning leading up to the U.S. Olympic trials coming up in November in Omaha, Joe.
Yeah, you know, and once you've subscribed, go back and listen to some of those previous episodes. We've got 4 others in backlog there where you can talk, you hear conversations with Team Sinclair, with Phil Dropnick, who's Team USA coach, with Brady Clark and Greg Persinger from Team Clark. And last week we had Corey Christensen and Sarah Anderson on as well. And these stories, you know, how they're preparing, what they did over the summer, you know, sort of how they got to where they are. It's really what this podcast is all about. And it's great to go back and listen to those episodes if you've missed them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A great idea if you have not heard the first 4 episodes, this being episode 5 of the Extra In podcast. But you can also get it iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and without a doubt, every single week, TESN.US/podcast. Again, TESN.US/podcast. We got every single episode right there on the 12th In Sports Network website. And it's also, Joe, where you can sign up to win some of the great prizes, and we got another great one to give away this week.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Red Elephant Chocolates is giving us a full house chocolate set. And, you know, when I thought about who we might go after to get some folks to help us set up these contests, they were one of the first ones I thought of. And
who doesn't love chocolates, Joe? Who doesn't love chocolate?
No kidding. And you know what a great gift idea. You know, if you win this, you can give it to that curling fan that you love so much. So
no doubt about it.
There you go. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But, each and every week you come back and sign up for a new contest.
Especially your sweet tooth. You got to get ready for Halloween just around the corner. Then we pivot right into Christmas, man. You mentioned some of our other guests we've had on, Joe. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up just from the outset, okay? Because I think in fairness we need to do that. And some of our, if not all, of our previous guests we've had on here, they've gotten the extra in podcast bump.
Yeah, we've joked a little bit about it in online, and Team Sinclair, they wound up winning a World Curling Tour event the week that they were on. Sean Murray, who co-hosted with us in episode 3, he went out and won a Spiel that following weekend, and then this past weekend, Corey Christensen, their team made it into the playoffs of the event that they were in, a semifinal. So I got to believe that we have something to do with it, a very, very small part, but something to do with it nonetheless.
There is no question we have something to do with it here on the Extra in podcast. I am a believer. I am superstitious. I am a firm believer in superstition that is simply about the podcast bump right here. But do you think we can take a little bit of a podcast bump for our NFL teams this week that – I don't know if you want to say the podcast bump, but how about the Buffalo Bills and my Carolina Panthers? How about the bump they got this weekend on the road, Joe?
No kidding. I think the podcast bump affects the NFL referees. And in the Buffalo Bills case, I've never seen so many breaks go our way. And I say our, even though I'm not part of the team. But they are they're a surprise, that's for sure. And those Panthers, they're the only blemish on the Bills' record right now, and they're playing terrific. They took care of New England for us, so thank you so much.
We are the tie that binds Joe Calabrese and Price Atkinson. We are united at the hip, and it's the NFL that has a partial attachment. Is we are bound by your Buffalo Bills, my Carolina Panthers. Just a lot of fun we've had this year, talking a little NFL, a little bit. It's going well for now. When this thing goes south, I think that stuff and that talk will cease, especially as we really get into the meat of curling season. But we got a big show coming up here, as Joe mentioned, and we talked about earlier. In the next segment, we will talk with John Benton and Todd Birr from Team Birr, going to talk about just simply winning their appeal and being included as the 5th men's team at the U.S. Olympic trials coming up November 11th through the 18th in Omaha, Nebraska at Baxter Arena. We've got that for you. Then followed by that, we've got our weekly roundtable as Joe and I will talk with 2-time Olympian Jessica Schultz right here on the Extra In podcast with the 12th In Sport Network, powered by Isagenix. We'll be right back with that interview with Team Birr here on the podcast. You tried different weight loss programs and are still looking for results? I was too until I found Isagenix, and it didn't take long before I started getting the results that I wanted. Isagenix is a complete 9-day or 30-day weight loss, energy, performance, and health aging program. With over 550,000 customers in 7 countries, Isagenix's science-backed ingredients and products are rigorously tested for safety and will help boost your weight loss efforts by gently cleansing and nourishing your body. Isagenix's cleansing and fat-burning system has helped me relieve daily stress and given me even more energy to play with my kids from sun up to sundown. Every day and every week, I'm coming across and meeting a friend of mine that is also an Isagenix customer. My personal Isagenix associate, Sarah Schuster, helped me take control of my health and, most importantly, my life. Sarah walked me through the entire process, answered every question, and most importantly, serves as my personal daily cheerleader. And she can do the same and more for you. Give Sarah a call with the keyword curling at 218-391-1566, and she'll waive your 1-year membership fee. Stop making excuses and start taking control. Let Sarah get you started on a healthier life at 218-391-1566. Isagenix did it for me, and it can do it for you. Welcome back into the Extra In podcast here with the 12th In Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. And Joe, we've got a special, and I say special, also exclusive interview here as we are joined by John Benton and Todd Birr from Team Birr. This is a treat, an exciting opportunity to talk to John and Todd here after what was a victorious day on basically September the 21st on that Thursday there in the Twin Cities. Guys, welcome into the Extra In podcast.
Thank you, Bryce.
Well, let's get out of the gate. I guess really, what's the last few days for you, John, Todd? I mean, just hop in here. What is the last few days in week been like for you guys, 10 days since the decision was announced that you guys would be included in the upcoming U.S. Olympic trials November in Omaha? It's really not much, actually, to tell the truth. I mean, it's just we got a lot of preparation to do. I mean, it was a victory to get the invitation, but, that's not our goal. Yeah.
Our goal is to win, and so there's a lot to be done yet, and yeah, I you know me, I didn't get too excited.
John?
Well, that's anybody who knows Todd knows that he's not lying there. I think obviously it was a big day for us to hear that we were in, but we have always kind of treated it like that was a spot that we had earned. Yeah. So while there's been kind of an increase in planning, obviously getting stuff ready for Omaha, it's, largely been, business as usual. And really the only activity really has been, seeing all of our friends and friends and family, messaging and, giving us well wishes and congrats and all of that on Facebook or wherever it might be. There's been a lot of activity there, but as far as the team goes, pretty much, working on our schedule and travel plans. As you know, we have a new player on the team, so making sure that he can get to all the prep events that we're going to be playing in is an important thing. But yeah, it's pretty much business as usual.
When earlier this season, Price had a chance to talk to Richie Ruohonen, who was on your team at Nationals, and he seemed to indicate that he felt that you guys would have to win Nationals to earn that spot. Was that the opinion of the team going into the event, and did that sort of change as the event rolled on and you wound up with the silver medal?
No, I don't really think so. We really didn't even talk about the trials at all during Nationals. It really wasn't until after the fact that we started looking at what our season had looked like and where that put us in the standings. I personally, I didn't think it mattered to win Nationals or not. I don't think that was an automatic berth, and I didn't think it was inherently going to keep us out either.
Well, I'd agree with Todd. I mean, we didn't really talk about it much until afterward, and I think we felt that it was pretty clear that we were one of the top teams over the last 2 years, as it was, just based on how we had played against the top teams in our country, and we had a couple of significant international wins. So at the very least, I figured we were probably in the running, and I guess given the finish at Nationals, I kind of thought that would seal the deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, as Joe mentioned, Richie, Rich Ruohonen, what's his reaction? What has he said to you guys? Obviously, now he's playing with Chris Plies and a heater over there, and you guys pick up Hunter Clawson, who's now a member of Team Birr. What was Richie's reaction? And then also having Hunter now on board, just talk about that new dynamic as you guys get ready to turn the page here.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk with Rich after the decision came down. And he was very gracious and congratulatory. I think he had a little bit of a regret in that we had a fun time playing together, and I think he indicated that when I talked to him, and if he could go back, he would maybe make a different decision had he known that we were going to win the case. But as most people know, it's hard to win these cases. It doesn't happen very often. So.
Yeah.
We certainly don't blame him for the decision that he made. And having Hunter on the team is pretty awesome. I mean, Hunter's one of top new young fresh curlers on the scene, right? And he approached us very early on after Rich left the team and said that he was available and to let him know whether or not we were interested. And I feel really comfortable having Hunter on the team, just knowing who he was coached by and the fact that he's handled himself so well, in some pretty competitive situations as it's been the last few years. So, I mean, kid's headed off to the mixed world championships. So, you can't you can't really doubt his ability or skill level. So it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to competing in the trials with a new fresh face.
And so, where does Hunter sort of slide into the lineup? Is he just a straight up replacement in terms of being vice, or are you mixing up the lineup for trial?
Well, we're still, I think, he did play vice in our first tournament in Oakville this year. But, given the short time that we have to get ready for the Olympic trials, we're looking at some changes there and just kind of see how that goes.
All right, as we're
keep a little mystery out there.
Yeah. As we're talking with John Benton and Todd Birr from Team Birr, victorious in one step, but now the real hard work begins, preparing for the Olympic trials coming up at Baxter Arena in Omaha. And guys, just kind of walk us through everything, the process, how everything went down. You guys had a long day Thursday, September the 21st, with the hearing with USA Curling. Just kind of talk about the day, and then, just simply, what was the crux in stating your case before the USCA of why you guys belonged? Because you guys represented by, an outstanding attorney in Mark Beyer who represented you guys, and I got something to ask you about him here in a few minutes. But, just kind of talk about the day and the crux of the argument of why you guys simply belonged.
Well, I'll start by the day started just fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Our attorney, you mentioned him, Mark Beyer, got rear-ended on the way to the hearing.
Oh, geez.
Just right out in front of the Four Seasons Curling Club is where we were meeting, and just turning into the parking lot, he got just nailed. Fortunately, he was okay.
Yeah.
The guy that hit him, they did actually take him in an ambulance.
Oh no!
Although it wasn't anything permanent as far as I'm aware, or serious, but he did get bounced around a little bit when he hit him.
Can you imagine, on your way to an important case for your friends and you're an attorney and you get rear-ended on your way to the final hearing?
Wow. He did make sure I mentioned to you guys, his car is still in the shop.
Yes.
Sure. I mean,
you were our star witness.
Our star witness. Well, I was given the pleasure of being our only witness on the stand, just because there was a number of things that had been emailed back and forth with the USCA and during the case, and I ended up putting a lot of that documentation together. So it was basically up to me to kind of explain, what the purpose was and why we did that, and those kinds of things. So, I was on the stand for a while, and just like any court case, it was, direct examination, cross-examination, and redirect, recross, that kind of thing. And the panel had a chance to ask some questions of each witness. And I think, once the decision is published, and I don't know when that will be, I'm sure the USDA will be doing that, or will be doing that, but
yeah.
It really came down to one basic element, and that was that in the published criteria for discretionary selections, it basically said World Curling Tour results and performances from 15-16 and 16-17, and Nationals performances from the same 2 years. And what has happened is that they've taken some liberties with what World Curling Tour performances and results meant. And they started looking at things like games against international opponents and the number of international tournaments you played in and games against top 20 teams. And they actually used those criteria to make their selections and to decide, who is in and who is out. And the long and short of it is that the panel felt that was an abuse of their discretion because they didn't publish those very specific criteria. They didn't give anybody a chance to really know what those things were. And that's, if you read the decision, that's basically what it came down to. There were some other, I think, good points in our case, and they had some defense, which I think was really good. But in the end, it really came down to, having, clearly stated criteria for any team, not just our team, but any team, to know how they would qualify for the Olympic trials.
Did you guys ever have, was there ever a doubt that you guys would win this appeal, that, I guess, rational thought wouldn't win? I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but I guess, was there ever a doubt on y'all's part that, hey, we might not win this thing, but we're going to fight the good fight just to see if we can make this thing happen? Was there ever any doubt?
Well, we're prepared to go on. The next step would have been arbitration with the USOC, and we were prepared to do that. And so, we had considered. I don't think it was a slam dunk. I think it should have been. Yeah. But there's a lot of going on there, and so you can't guarantee how someone's going to perceive the situation and how they're going to vote. So I didn't think we were ever overconfident, and that's for sure.
Yeah. In my sense that I got just in talking to people and just seeing the, online and just the curling community as a whole, the sense that I got and felt, you guys had overwhelming support from the curling community at large, that this was simply about fairness and that you guys deserve to be included. Did you get the sense of that overwhelming feeling, or a feeling that, that you had the majority of people out there from the curling community with you guys?
I certainly did. There's kind of that perception, right, of what's right and what's wrong, and I said a number of times that it just felt to me like everybody outside of the selection room, kind of felt we were in that top five. Mm-hmm. I can see where, you could make some arguments differently, but again, it really came back to the criteria. And, I've never felt, more support in something that I've done, than I did with this. Just all of our, curling friends, far and wide, internationally, locally, lots of, club curlers, competitive curlers, just really, kind of making it feel like we had all that support.
I did really not much I can add to that. There's a lot of support, and everybody, obviously, where we work, we see people every day, and just all through the summer, like constantly, people were asking and expressing their support.
Yeah, so guys, we've talked about how there's no off season anymore in curling, and you guys are part of the Four Seasons Curling Club. There's ice all year long, and so I guess what my question is what's next for the team? You've obviously been preparing all summer and practicing, I'm sure. Now that you've got Hunter on the team, how do you guys prepare together and get yourself ready for these trials in November?
Well,
that's a secret, Joe.
Yeah. Well, fortunately with the situation with Hunter is that he's able to spend time. He'll be spending considerable time actually here in the Twin Cities in prep for the trials, and then of course the tournaments that we'll play together. So despite where he lives, I don't think that's going to be a big issue for us.
Yeah, and one thing I want to ask you guys as we close up shop here with John Benton and Todd Birr, now that you're obviously included, this isn't going to get a blue ribbon or a participation trophy. You guys are going there to win. This isn't simply you got there. I know that was a big battle to get there, but this isn't just to go have a good time in Omaha. You guys are going with your sights set on the prize here, and that's to win the Olympic trials.
Yeah, it's going to be a dogfight.
Sure.
There's 5 good teams there, and every game is is going to be a dogfight. I mean, you can win them, but every team can beat you too. So I expect that. I'm thinking it's a double round robin, right? As I understand, with the best of 3 playoffs, same way they did it last time. So it's certainly don't expect anybody is going to just walk right through that field.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a matter of being patient and playing one game at a time, and hopefully at the end of the week, put yourself in a position where you can make the finals.
I totally agree with that. It's so much different than nationals where you have more teams and you're not facing everybody twice, and all of these teams, especially over the last couple of years, I mean, we know each other so well that and with the added kind of energy that goes into an Olympic trials and all of the prep work, everybody's going to be fully prepared and ready to go. So I don't, you're going to see probably, the best curling that you've seen in the United States in the past, decade is my guess, because it's everybody's ramped it up even a bit more since 2014. And it's going to be a battle.
Mm-hmm.
And this weekend, you guys have a chance to prepare against 3 of those teams that you'll be playing against in the St. Paul Cash Spiel, right in your own backyard. How do you feel about that? Is getting a chance to scout and prepare against those teams, maybe if the draw works out correctly?
Yeah, actually, it's just, for us, it's really, we've only played one tournament so far this year, and it's really kind of the start, and especially with the fact that we're now in the trials, and so things have taken a bit of a different light. So it's kind of an entry tournament, the way I'm looking at it. I know we don't have a lot of time, but just, get together as a team and just feel things out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have performed well in St. Paul the past 2 years, so that's we've got that going for us. Is we obviously, that being my home club for a long time, super familiar with it. But there's something just about being there. It's kind of comfortable. You don't have to be in a hotel, and it's a chance for us to work on some of the finer things that we need to work on as we prepare for November.
Well, guys, Todd Birr, John Benton, we just can't thank you enough for taking the time here on the Extra Extra podcast, just, to talk to the curling community, your fans, people around the sport, Joe and I ourselves. I'll say personally, from my personal standpoint, number one, just very excited you guys are going to be in Omaha. 4 great curlers, 4 gentlemen, 4 people that just bring a lot of fun and joy to the sport. I just can't wait to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Bryce. Thanks, Joe.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yep, that's Todd Birr and John Benton, and Joe and I will be right back here on the Extra Extra In podcast, powered by Isagenix.
Red Elephant Chocolate's sophisticated yet whimsical approach, premium products, and ideal locations help them become one of Wisconsin's leaders in handcrafted chocolates. What sets them apart are their artistic truffles, small batch caramels, imaginative flavors, and distinctive specialties, including Theobroma, the world's rarest chocolate, and the original Big Cheese cheddar truffle. Many ask, what's with the name Red Elephant Chocolate? Red is what gives candy canes their lanes, fashions any old brandy into a brandy old-fashioned, and makes a rose not just any rose, but one that demands a peck, a kiss, or perhaps even a roll in the hay. Like an elephant, love is grand, genuine, and undeniable. Most remarkable is that, despite their strength and size, elephants depend most on the love of their family to survive. If love had a flavor, it would taste like chocolate. So they became Red Elephant Chocolate. As their home is near the major hub for curling in the USA, their relationship with the sport may be less abstract than you think. They love curling, and several of them play the game. This week, we are giving you the chance to win a full house curling-themed set of chocolates from Red Elephant Chocolate. It's 17 total pieces, 16 curling stone-shaped chocolates, 8 dark, 8 milk, and a box that looks like a house with their signature elephant chocolate on the button. To enter this delicious contest, go to the website www.TESN.US/podcast and click on the win widget. We'll announce our winner next week.
All right, welcome back into the Extra Inning podcast with the 12th End Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. Price Atkinson, Joe Calabrese, and joined once again for the second week in a row by two-time Olympian Jessica Schultz joining us. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Price. Thanks for having me on here again.
Yeah, thanks, Jess, so much for doing this. And, before we go a step further, I thought about this earlier, and I thought this was the time to do it. And I just want to say, before we do move any further on this, it's been a trying, a tough, kind of tumultuous week around the country, but certainly in Las Vegas with what transpired Sunday night into early Monday morning here in the East Coast. But just quite simply that our thoughts and prayers, anybody that was affected that's listening right now by the horrific, unspeakable, unnecessary events that went down in Las Vegas on Sunday night, our thoughts and prayers and hearts are with you, because that quite simply is beyond unimaginable what we've seen. So I just wanted to say that just very quickly as we get ready to get out of the gate in our weekly roundtable. Jess, I guess let's start with you here. A eventful week, but as Joe and I talked earlier here in the podcast with Todd Birr and John Benton, simply successful in their appeal. You were one of three that sat on, that heard the case. I guess just simply from 1,000-foot level, just what was it like from your standpoint to kind of go through this process?
Right. Yeah, it was interesting. That's for darn sure. Being on both sides, I kind of felt like I was towing the line, being a director on the board for the Curling Association, as well as on the Athletes Advisory Committee, and knowing both sides, knowing Team Birr's team really well, and knowing Rick and the whole crew, all the members on the selection committee. So it was definitely touching home. It was a great experience for me personally. And it was definitely a challenging one to kind of overcome, because my main goal going into this, knowing that I have people on both sides that are going to be affected, that I wanted to just go into it as unbiased and objective as I can, and just take forward all the evidence and get to know the process and really understand what I was doing going into this, and what the effect of that decision was going to be.
So, Jessica, what were you expecting kind of going into that day on the 21st?
I knew that there was going to be a trial, and I knew I already had gone through a lot of the exhibits, and I was told to plan for a day, and I did, and it was definitely a day. It was great. I mean, it was not great. It was great as a learning experience, right? I haven't been through the law side before, and getting to sit on a panel and hearing, witnesses be sworn in and cross-examinations and hearing, John Benton and Rick and Derek and, Rich, Leland Rich all on there, and discussing their points and reasons why things should be one way or the other. So it was definitely an interesting day.
What was your biggest takeaway from it, from a very long, trying, emotional day? What was your personal biggest takeaway from the September 21st in the hearing? I
think that there was a lot to take away from that day, actually.
Okay. I
think the biggest thing is communication and being objective. And so that's probably my biggest takeaway, and that can cross over to anything you do in life, right? And then I got to sit with David Russell and learned a lot from him, and Mark Swami are both two great guys. So it was definitely good.
Well, I don't think we need to go too much deeper into this. I know that it was probably the news of the week, but I think we've covered it pretty well. Why don't we kind of switch gears a little bit here, start talking a little bit about sort of how they did, and sort of as they're approaching, sort of see where things lay right now. We talked a little bit before, Price and I, about the podcast bump, and it seemed like his team Christensen was on the podcast last week. They quite the beneficiary of the bump. They made it into the semifinals in Stockholm. Pretty good result from them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's great to see that they're doing well on tour and they are ready to peak at the right moment here.
Yeah, it was a solid field too, Joe. I mean, it was a good, some really good teams that were over there. They were the only U.S. team that was in Stockholm, and just getting a great result. You always want to win, but getting to the semis in that tournament, I know Coach Phil Drobnik and Team Christensen, they come home, feeling really good about their performance.
Yeah, there were some pretty strong international field there. Teams from Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, Scotland, Germany, Russia, Sweden. I mean, Annette Norberg was in that event. I mean, these are some solid teams, and to come out of there with a semifinal is a terrific result for that team, and I'm sure that it's going to give them a lot of confidence going into next month.
Staying on the women's side, Jess, I believe Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Team Sinclair in the latest world rankings up to number 9 in the world, if I've got that right. Moving into the top 10, that's pretty good company you're keeping with right there for Jamie Sinclair and her rank.
Oh, definitely. That's fantastic. I can't remember the last time someone's been up in there for the state.
Yeah, I think I read today that it was 2013 that a team had risen to that world ranking. That was the last time somebody had made it to at least number 9 in the world. So that's a terrific result for them. And, they're just building. It seems like they're just building and continuing to do well. Now, while they didn't qualify at this last event, they were playing in the Prestige Hotels and Resorts Curling Classic. Nina Roth's team made it into the quarterfinals. So they're building on some successes they had towards the end of last season and early into this season. They wound up losing in a quarterfinal to Rachel Homan, which is, if you're going to lose to somebody, Homan's not a bad one to lose to. But they were in it until the fourth end, and Homan cracked a 3 on them with the hammer, and it sort of took command of that game. But I think some really good results here from the women's teams as they head into next month.
Definitely.
You got to look at it as probably the favorite going over to South Korea, guys, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean,
yeah.
One of the things that we find out last week, and I don't want to say I made light out of it, but that for the upcoming world spot, Canada will be challenged by Brazil. And I don't want to laugh, guys, but, I mean, takeaways from that. I guess let's just take that as a jumping off point.
I think it's interesting that they made the decision to do that again. Normally Brazil sort of challenged the U.S. over the last few years, but with the Worlds being in the United States, the U.S. gets an automatic bid, so their only option was to challenge Canada. I'm curious as to who Canada will pick as a team to challenge to take on that challenge. Any ideas, Jess?
Honestly, they can probably pick any one of their teams from any tier, and they'd probably be okay.
Just say that. I guess what we're saying is right. The bench is pretty darn deep, right, Jess?
Right. Exactly.
All right.
So
go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry, Price. I was going to just transition over to the men's side, and Brady Clark's team was playing in Saskatoon. And wound up in the quarterfinals out there. They wound up losing to the eventual champion, Colton Flash. So they made another qualifier. So Clark's team just continuing to do well leading up to these trials. I think that what we're seeing now is that all these teams on the U.S. side, the goal of the HPP was really so that we could compete at a world level, and we're getting there more and more. Every week it seems like we're talking about teams qualifying.
Yeah, it was interesting, too, because, John Schuster, what I believe Brady and John were the 2 U.S. men's teams there, and John and those guys get knocked out a little bit earlier. But, Brady, as you mentioned, makes the quarterfinals. Those guys were feeling pretty good, had a good result. And you got to look at Brady right now. Those guys have had a pretty solid fall. I mean, it's a very shallow fall. We're not very far into this, but in the few tournaments they played, I think Brady and his crew, they've got to be feeling good, because where were they at? The Stoosdale's Tankard, Joe, if I've got that right? They had a fairly good result early in the season, and then making the quarters this past weekend in Saskatoon. Certainly something to build on.
Yeah, I think they're just going to continue to plug away and grind, as a team that, is outside that HPP. We've talked to them earlier in the podcast series, so you want to hear that interview. I think it's episode 3. You'll want to go back and listen to them. I think that they're just plugging away, and they're gonna be a force to be reckoned with next month.
All right, the St. Paul Cash Spiel coming up this weekend. Jess, cut to the chase. Any chance you're going to be a wild card entry?
Well, we're into it, actually.
Oh, you are in. You're playing.
Yeah, we're playing.
That's why she's on the podcast, is because she wants the podcast bump.
I haven't seen the field, yeah.
So getting a little more publicity for Team Eagle here. No, there's six women's teams that are playing. I was just looking at the draw. We have 1 game on Friday and 3 on Saturday. So depending on how that shakes out, hopefully we'll be playing on Sunday.
Well, we wish you the best of luck there, Jess. We talked a little bit about people who come on the podcast seem to do pretty well the next weekend. So my money's on you to do real well this weekend.
Hey, there you go. Thank you. Well, I'll be calling you guys again then come December when our next event is.
Sounds good.
Well, you look on the women's side, all three, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but none are playing in the St. Paul Cash Spiel in terms of the high-performance teams. They're going to be going – is it all 3 that are going to be in Calgary this weekend? I know for sure that none are going to be in St. Paul.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like all the high-performance teams on the women's side are going to be skipping St. Paul, going to Calgary, a little bit deeper field there. I'm sure it's worth a few more points. And, I bet you they're all trying to keep an eye on each other, too, to see how they're doing, what the weaknesses might be. It's that time of year where you got to be looking at those things if you want to advance.
What about on the men's side? Talk about the men's field, because that, as we just talked to Todd Birr and John Benton, those guys are going to be playing. But what does the men's field look like for this weekend in St. Paul?
4 of those 5 teams are going to be in the event. Schuster's the only one not in the event. I can't find him playing anywhere this week, so maybe they have the week off. But it's a pretty good field with all those U.S. teams playing in it. There's a good chance they'll be playing each other at some point, sort of previewing what happens next month.
Jess, you excited to get back on the ice this weekend and throw some rocks, get represent Bo Welling and Team Eagle?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it, and we'll see what the cobwebs shake off.
So this is your first event this season?
Yeah, this will be our first event. We had a practice weekend a couple weeks ago, but first one. We'll be catching up here.
And lineup's the same as last year?
Lineup is the same, yep.
Why don't you fill people in on who's playing with you?
Oh. All right. So I have Courtney George playing 3rd, Jordan Moulton playing 2nd, and Steph Seneca bringing in the lead. And then we have Doug Pottinger skipping.
Skipping, wow.
Skipping for us this year. He'll be coaching, and so Allison might be around. And yeah.
Oh, that's terrific. That's great.
Maybe, Joe, you and I can go ahead and anoint Team Schultz the favorite, especially as we know the podcast bump is coming their way. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's call Team Schultz the favorite at the St. Paul Cash Spiel. How about it?
I like it.
We'll see how it goes. If anybody's up right now.
All right. Well, Jess, 2-time Olympian Jessica Schultz, Joe Calabrese, Price Atkinson, myself, just, another great roundtable here. Great episode, but just appreciate everybody getting in this week. Jess, good luck this weekend from all of us. Like we said, the podcast bump is fully behind you. Just simply go out and do your thing in St. Paul.
We'll do the best we can. Thank you, guys. It was nice talking with you.
There you go. We'll be right back here on the Extra Action podcast with the 12th End Sports Network, powered by Isogenics.
If you're looking to buy new curling equipment, don't settle for cheap imitations. Hardline came onto the scene 7 years ago and is now at the forefront of high performance and recreational curling equipment. Hardline's ice pad is the best choice when it comes to brush heads, which is why top-ranked pros play with it, including world champions Team Gushu, as well as U.S. men's and women's national champions Team Schuster and Team Sinclair. Whether you're looking for brooms, the the Pro Slide Delivery Aid designed by Reed Carruthers, or shoes and apparel, take a look at Hardline and see why they are the number one choice for curling equipment. Show this sponsor your support by going to www.TESN.US and clicking on Hardline's Ice Pad logo.
All right, welcome back into the Extra and podcast with the 12th End Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. Price Atkinson and Joe Calabrese here. Joe, man, another great episode, episode 5, almost in the books, but, just a really great conversation interview with Todd Birr and John Benton there earlier.
Yeah, I think it was important for us to be able to sort of hear the story straight from the horse's mouth. And I think they outlined pretty much what I think that they felt their case was. And, ultimately they were successful. And so they're going to be joining those 4 teams we've always talked about in this podcast: Schuster, McCormick, Clark. He's going to be joining all those teams trying to get ready for the trials here in November.
Yeah, and, from a personal opinion here, just real quick, Joe, while we only have 3 teams on the women's side, the rules and everything that was stated that, 3 to 5 teams could compete on either side at the Olympic trials, I'm personally glad that we have a 5-team men's field. It's going to be a full, robust week, because if we only had 3 on one side, 3 on the other, a curling schedule as far as being in Omaha for that length of time, I'm just simply glad you add that many more games and have more of a robust week of competition, and not just competition, high-level competition.
Yeah, these teams are pretty evenly matched, and they're going to be doing a double round robin. And so I think, whoever's best that week is going to get determined, and, they're going to be our best representative going forward. I know that we've talked a little bit before about sort of Schuster's attitude going into this, and, obviously they feel like they have every opportunity at a world stage to kind of prove their worth. But these other teams, they're nipping at their heels, and they're not that far behind. And I do think that this is going to be a dogfight when it gets to Omaha.
Yeah, I totally agree, and just can't wait for it. And also to let you know, Team USA, they announced upcoming Team USA Winterfest events presented by Hershey's, starting with the 100-day countdown event. That event is going to be in New York City, in Times Square. That's going to be November the 1st. It's going to last from 3 to 8 p.m. You're going to be able to see a live show on the Olympic Channel, home of Team USA, from 7 to 8 p.m. on the night of November the 1st. But 3 to 8 p.m., going to have all kinds of Olympians. We're going to have a lot of curlers there, Winter Olympians from other sports that are seeking to make their return to the Winter Olympics. But Times Square, New York City, November the 1st. I'll be there with Team USA. Should be another great event, and just can't wait to take part in a couple of those, as we've got another one of those with street curling and some other things coming up November the 11th. Joe, want to make sure we hit the St. Paul Caspiel coming up this week, and just a fantastic event locally there in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, one of our affiliates, TESN St. Paul, puts this up on the web, and so you're going to see 4 of the 5 men's trials teams in action. The only team missing is going to be Schuster, but it's going to be from September. I'm in the wrong month. October 6th to 8th, and they're going to have commentary for a lot of these games. So it should be a very high quality webcast. And so that's not all we've got this weekend. We've got Team St. Clair, who's also going to be out at the Curler's Corner Autumn Gold Curling Classic. Well, there's a lot of C's in that one, but in Curler's Corner, wow! They're going to be webcasting from there all weekend as well, and they webcast as many games as they're able to, and this weekend is one of them. So we're looking forward to that on the webcast as well. And then finally, Team Murray. Sean Murray has helped TESN for quite some time. When he decided he was going to put his men's team back together, TESN decided we were going to support him in some way, and as a result, they're going to also be webcasting from St. Paul their games. So there should be a number of different streams out there for people to enjoy this weekend. As we get closer and closer to ice being installed here in Rochester, we're real excited about that.
Yeah, baby. It's starting to cool down here in South Carolina, too. The humidity's going down, and so is the temperature ever so slowly. But check out TESN.US. Online, the 12th In Sports Network. Catch everything streamed there. Also, make sure to follow the 12th In Sports Network on Twitter and Facebook at 12th In Sports. Your home for live streaming, our contest giveaways, listen to the podcast, all the different ways you can connect with us. Next week here on the Extra Extra and podcast, we'll talk with Heater McCormick and Corey Dropkin from Team McCormick, another big episode. But Joe, just before we get out of here, excited for another weekend of some good curling. Just always good to do this every week with you. Just something I look forward to and will continue to look forward to as we get closer to Omaha, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. A new podcast drops every Thursday morning. So get at it. Subscribe on Apple and Google Play.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, all the different ways you can catch us. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. A lot of fun here on episode 5 of the Extra Extra and podcast with the 12th In Sports Network, powered by Isagenix. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for being with us on this edition of the Extra Extra In podcast with Price Atkinson. Follow Price and the 12th In Sports Network crew on Twitter and Facebook to stay up on our weekly contests, giveaways, and guests for upcoming episodes of the Extra Extra In podcast, powered by Isagenix.